Hello everyone, this is a quick lecture to go over some of the basic brain structures that you all will be reading about. Will hopefully help assist you while you read chapter 6 and try to keep the different structures separate and know their basic functions. To get started, here's a kind of an image of our brain from a side view and a bird's eye view. I bring this up, I want you to notice first of all, that your brain is made up of two hemispheres. Some people refer to it as having two brains, if you will. We have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. For a long time, we thought these hemispheres did very different things. The reality is, for the most part, they're the same. They're very symmetrical. They operate very similarly. To think that a person is very left brain or right brain, that's actually a little out of date. There are some functions that do reside solely in one hemisphere. For example, language is located in our left hemisphere. For the most part, these two hemispheres are going to operate the same and going to serve similar functions. Some of the older structures of the brain, what we refer to as our hindbrain, is going to be, if you get to the top of the spinal cord where we have our brain stem, the first is going to be the medulla. You can see the medulla down here as part of our brain. The medulla, think of as your lifeline. It's essentially controlling your heartbeat and your breathing. It's keeping you alive. Whereas the pons, just above that, the primary function of the pons is going to help us with sleep. It's going to release a neurotransmitter that's going to put us to sleep. It also helps with other things like bladder control. They had a study where they severed a cat's upper brain, so they essentially would sever this gray area, the upper part of our brain that deals with creativity and imagination, thought process. And the cats still live, so they would breathe, run around, climb on things, screw themselves, but they did so without any purpose. Essentially, I think this is what's keeping us alive, our basic functions, if you will. The cerebellum, some people refer to as the mini brain, is going to be this structure toward the back of our brain. The cerebellum is going to help us primarily with balance. Think big movements, big coordination, climbing a tree, riding a bike. This is your cerebellum at work. It serves some other things, but you don't need to concern yourself too much with them. The big massive part of our brain that you probably think of when you think of a brain is what we refer to as the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex consists of several crevices and wrinkles, things like that, which increases surface area. And your cerebral cortex is divided into four main lobes. Keep in mind you're going to have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, so when we talk about the frontal lobe, you actually have essentially two frontal lobes. You have one on the left side and on the right side. Your frontal lobe is the largest lobe. Think of it as your main thought processor. It allows you to be creative, use your imagination, problem solve, plan for the future. It's what separates us from many other animals in regard to what we're capable of doing, higher order thinking skills. Your frontal lobe doesn't fully develop until you're really in your mid-20s, so taking this class now, you still are making connections with your frontal lobe. Might help explain why teenagers don't always think things through all the way. So let me get this off your screen here. Why teenagers might, make a mistake and say, well, I just wasn't thinking about that, or I didn't think it all the way through. I wasn't planning for the future, if you will. It's because the frontal lobe is still developing. Your parietal lobe, which is right at the top of your brain, kind of the top of your skull, this is going to interpret sensory input. So if you're holding a ice cube in one hand and a lit match in the other, the reason you know that one's hot and one is cold and one's in your left hand and one is in your right hand, your parietal lobe is interpreting these different sensory inputs. Your occipital lobe, the smallest lobe, is the back of your brain. Think of the two C's here in occipital. Your occipital lobe helps you see. It interprets your sense of sight. Your eyes, obviously, at the front of your head have what we call optic nerves, the back of the eyeball, and they cross over and essentially send information to the occipital lobe for interpretation and vision. And then your temporal lobe, think your temples on the side of your head. You rub your temples if you have a headache or something. Temporal lobe on the side. This is going to primarily help interpret smell and sound, and it has some other functions as well, but for the sake of this class, if you can link temporal lobe with smell and sound, you know everything you need to know. And then there's several structures that I have here. The first four that I have listed are going to be part of what we call the limbic system. The limbic system is influences emotions, motivation, learning, things like that. The first is your hippocampus, which helps create memories. Your memories aren't stored in your hippocampus or anything like that. Memories are stored throughout the brain. It's a neural pathway. Memory is nothing physical, but your hippocampus is what helps create memories. So when you're learning something new, your hippocampus is helping with that creation process. If you damage your hippocampus, you wouldn't necessarily forget who you were or forget your 10th birthday or anything like that. But if you damage your hippocampus, you would be unable to remember future events because that's where memory is created. Like if you see a hippo walking across a campus, you'll never forget it. Your amygdala. Your amygdala is going to help control some strong emotions like anger and aggression. Don't think of it necessarily as your aggression center. It's not forcing you to become aggressive or anything like that, but helping control those strong emotions that we have. Your hypothalamus is constantly trying to maintain homeostasis in your brain, and your hypothalamus is going to be your reward center, if you will. When we do things that our body likes, that our body recognizes is important for survival, such as eating food when you're hungry, drinking water when you're thirsty, your hypothalamus is going to release dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter that feels good. And when you do that, your body says this is good. You'll tend to do those things again in the future. Your thalamus, which surrounds your hypothalamus, this is going to integrate information that comes into your brain. Don't confuse it with the parietal lobe, which interprets your sensory information. The thalamus, think of it as kind of a circuit board, or the brain's brain. When information comes into the brain, the thalamus is directing it where to go. So if information comes in that requires critical thinking, it's going to send that information to our frontal lobes for analysis and thought. Whereas if information comes in that maybe it's an emergency, we don't have time to think about every possible scenario, it's going to redirect that information to other parts of our body that are going to help us survive. The basal ganglia, this is fine motor control. It also deals with movement, kind of like the cerebellum, but think cerebellum's big movement, riding a bike, climbing a tree, things like that. Whereas your basal ganglia is what allows you to grasp a pen, play the violin, things like that, tie a shoe. It's more fine motor control and dexterity. And if you are familiar with Parkinson's disease, for example, someone who has advanced Parkinson's, and you see that they're shaky. This is essentially an attack on the basal ganglia and the activity within the basal ganglia and the loss of that motor control. Your corpus callosum, it's a relatively large structure within our brain. It's made up of millions and millions and millions of nerve fibers that connects your left and right hemisphere. Its primary purpose is not only to connect the two hemispheres, but also to allow information to travel back and forth between the hemispheres. In some extreme cases of epilepsy, sometimes surgeons will sever the corpus callosum to kind of quiet the electrical storm between the two hemispheres. And when they do that, information that resides within the left hemisphere obviously cannot be sent over to the right hemisphere, and vice versa. And the last one, the cerebrum, is just essentially another word for your cerebral cortex. This is where the lobes from the prior slide are made, or located, I guess I should say. Your cerebrum is kind of a big chunky part of your brain. Hopefully that helps just clarify some of the big structures that you'll be reading about and working with this unit. If you have any questions, by all means shoot me an email, and good luck.